everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new, and welcome to day 9 of BOOKMAS. Today we're talking about my top 24 books of 2024. Technically, these are the honourable mentions. These are books 24 to 11. My top 10 video is coming tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. But I wanted to separate them so that you can see like a bigger list. I gave 29 5 stars in 2024, so I feel like I've literally picked everything that I gave 5 stars on this list. There is only like a couple that I missed out. Like one of them was a fantasy, one of them was a fanfic, so technically I don't rate fan fiction, but like my personal tracking, I gave it a 5 star because I loved it. This is my top fave fan fiction that I read in 2025, if you're wondering, so loved this. And then one is like a cancelled author that I don't give clout, and then the other one was like I've already concluded 2 of her books, so I was like, you need to miss out, you can't have 3 in the top 24. So that's how I've done it. My top 10 only can have 1 book per author. Like I've tried to sort of mix it up. There is a couple of authors that have like 2 or 3 in the top 24. Yeah, my top 10 can only be 1 per author. Don't know why I do it that way. That's just the way that I do it. Ranking the 5 stars is really hard because they're all very, very good. I'm gonna start with from the bottom and work my way up. My bottom 4, 5 are books that I potentially could have given like a 4.75, maybe a 4.5, but ultimately rounded them up because I thought that they were still like top faves, and I really could only find like a minor fault, so it wasn't really enough for me to take down that half star. So that was my logic there. The first one is Only With Me by Brooke Montgomery. This is older sister's ex-boyfriend, and she is a virgin who wants her secret identity pen pal to teach her how to have sex. So Waylon gets invited to this like a local country like group chat where there's people that talk about like the things that they need on their ranch and like life. Anyway, he gets invited to it by his best friend, gets added into this group chat, doesn't get introduced, and then starts chatting away with this girl, not knowing like who it is. But at the same time, he's forming a connection with his ex-girlfriend's little sister when she's coming to his ranch to learn how to ride a horse. So they start building a connection. He's building a connection with this person. They organize a meetup, and he realizes it's his ex-girlfriend's little sister. Eventually, it all comes out, but before that can happen, Harley propositions him and says, hey, so I want to know how to do these things, so you're going to help me. And it goes from there. It is very heavy, so check your trigger warnings, but I truly really struggled to find anything that was overly wrong with it. It just didn't give me that overall like major 5-star feeling. It didn't give me like a 6-star feeling, but it's still like I couldn't find anything to majorly critique about it. So it got a 5-star. And I loved it. Then we have Fragile Sanctuary by Catherine Cowles. At the time when I finished this, I was a little bit triggered and I thought maybe it'd be a 4.75. I did give it a 5-star in the end. It was just after some violence against women attacks that sort of happened in a string very closely here, and it kind of just really triggered me, but I knew that was just timing and it wasn't a bad book, so I did give it a 5-star. This is a brother's best friend, forced proximity, age gap, grumpy sunshine, all the good things. So she's an adoptive sibling into this family after all of her parents died in a tragic house fire. So now she is renovating that house, and her brother's best friend comes to work in his construction company. He is a retired FBI profiler, and they don't start off on the great right foot, and eventually like their romance builds and blooms, and I love this. I love the strength that Rhodes grows, and I love the way that they just have this beautiful and sincere love. Definitely like a top fave Catherine Cowles. This series will probably take out top spot because it is amazing, but I think the top 3 series for me are going to be very, very tight. But I do have another Catherine Cowles in this list. So then we have Ashes of You by Catherine Cowles. Now, Catherine Cowles has 3 books in the top 24, and I'm not mad about it because I love her. This one I read right at the start of the year, so it's not super fresh in my mind, and I have read a lot of Catherine Cowles this year. This is a single dad nanny romance, age gap. He has like 3 like teenage-ish sons. They're not like little, they're like various ages, and he needs help looking after his kids. And she gets saved on this by him many years ago, and she's never been able to forget his eyes because it's his piercing blue eyes. This was beautiful. I loved this. Again, I don't remember a lot about it because I wrote a lot since then. This is a top fave. This series is definitely a fave. I gave 3 books in this series 5 stars. That tells you everything, but I loved it. The last 3 books in this series are my top faves in that. So this was an absolute winner, and I cannot wait to see what she comes out with next year because there is just so many. All of Catherine Cowell's books are romantic suspense. They don't normally have a 3rd act breakup, which is always a win for me. They have great like family and found family aspects, which is why I loved them. They are very much similar. They do follow a formula, but I think if you're wanting books that will always entertain you, you know what you're gonna get, you may not suspect the bad guy, these are the perfect ones for you. I very rarely guess the bad guy. Maybe I like half guess it, get halfway there, but I very rarely guess the bad guy. And for these, I didn't. Then we have One Night by Lena Hendricks. Now this got an automatic 5 star. This definitely didn't teeter on that, maybe potentially a lower rating. That said, there is another one that I thought was better, which is higher up ranked. This is an accidental pregnancy, rival families romance. So these two come from the same small town. Their families can't stand each other. She's like forbidden to him, and then one night they have a one-night stand. See where that's gonna go. But I love their romance, and every time that he dropped "Don't talk about my wife like that," I was done. The way he was fiercely protective of her was amazing. I love Lena Hendricks. This book probably solidified like her being a top author for me. That is book 21. Book 20. Now, this is one that I potentially could have given 4.75 if I wanted to be hypercritical, but I did like this a little bit more than One Night because of the messaging and the journey that these two go on. That's how I'm going to explain that. Only reason that I potentially would have marked this down to a 4.75 is because I didn't love the 3rd act breakup. I don't like it when people don't communicate, and that just really takes me out. But overall, I think that this is great, and the way that it was all resolved at the end made up for it. So that's why I would have given it a 4.75 and ultimately chose to give it a 5. This is my first Abby Jimenez, and I loved it. This is an age gap romance, but she's the older one. She runs into this town after a car breaks down after her family funeral, and goes to this like local town pub where there's so many quirky characters, a goat dressed in pajamas, and chaos. And she's like, I'm not gonna go home with this guy, I'm not gonna go home with this guy. She goes home with this guy, has a one-night stand, and continues to see him for months on end without telling anybody. There is such a beautiful romance that blooms between Daniel and Alexis, and Daniel just continually shows up for her, but she's just really jaded after her divorce and feels like the world's on her shoulders, like has so much responsibility to take over the family legacy because her brother's like moved away from the family legacy and it all rests on her. So she's got a lot of pressure, and I really enjoyed Alexis's story of growing and seeing her worth and standing up for herself. I thought it was fantastic. We are into the top 20. Number 19 is The Playbook by Rebecca Genchak. This basically got a 5 star based on pure enjoyment. This didn't have anything overly profound behind it, but it was pure enjoyment. I adored this book with my whole freaking chest. That's on that. This is a part of the Holland Brothers series, and essentially this is like an enemies to lovers, hate to love style fake dating. Basically what happens is he has a PO box and gets a ton of fan mail, then cancels his PO box and someone else takes it over, but doesn't sort of update the PO box, and she keeps receiving panties to her PO box. She has no idea who he is. She doesn't know that he's a famous football player. And one night her friend goes, oh, that's the guy that said gets panties that you're getting. So she goes up to him and loses her mind, and he's just like, who is this woman? And is like head over heels for her on site. And they end up fake dating for her sister's wedding because from memory, her ex-boyfriend's gonna be there. It's so good. I'm obsessed with this. This is like my favorite Rebecca Genchak to date. Next we have Crossroads by Devney. Now Devney Perry also potentially could have had 3 books on this series, but I ended up taking one out because I felt like I didn't need to include it. But this one, this is a second chance romance. So Indy comes to West's family like a summer ranch every summer as a kid. Eventually they go their separate ways once she sort of grows up and her family stops coming back. And then years go by and his family ranch is struggling, so she buys it and is going to sort of reinvent it and make it better, but he cannot stand her. He is so angry by that and doesn't want her to ruin the family legacy, but he doesn't know like how she's going to do it, and eventually shows him that she is the right person for the job, and it's their like journey back to each other, and it is so beautiful. I have loved this series. I also really love Sunlight, but I got like a 4.5. Truly one of the best books I've ever read. I love Devney Perry and everything she writes, so obviously this got a 5 star. We have a photo finish by Elsie Silver. She only got 2 5 stars this year, which is kind of surprising, but I Love this. This is so different. This is Violet Eaton's story. Now, Violet Eaton is the sister of the Eaton brothers from the Chestnut Springs series, obviously. Now, this is from the Gold Rush Ranch series. So she wants to sort of reclaim her own identity, not wanting to be tied to like her brothers anymore. Goes to Ruby Creek and works there and ends up being a jockey, horse racer. I call her a jockey. I'm from Australia, so she's a jockey. I don't know what it actually is in Canada. But she goes there, and before she does that though, she decides she's gonna do something different, something fun. She's gonna start basically like an OnlyFans and do like naughty pictures for people. And she builds a connection with this one guy who never shows his face, never tells her who it is, like who he is, like anything about it. And he kind of wants her to do something that she's not quite comfortable with, and then she ends up doing it, but he ghosts her. Then flash forward, as she's working at the Gold Rush Ranch, she comes off a race. Who should speak to her when she's coming out of the race on a high and being surrounded by everyone that works at Gold Rush Ranch? That guy. She recognized his voice. He called her by her name, her screen name, and sparks fly. So it's a second chance romance, very much like a dislike to love. She is so angry at him for ghosting her, and it's their journey back to each other. He is ex-military, and it is very heavy. Like, there's some heavy topics, but I loved this. This is the story that I would have wanted for Bo. Like, Violet's story is a favorite for a reason, and I truly could not think of anything to complain about. Number 16, The Plus Ones by Maisie Eddings. Now, not a favorite I've seen recently on social media by people, but this one is a fave for me. Truly a fave for me. This is a fake dating brother's best friend, enemies to lovers. They're fake dating for her brother's wedding, and they're like childhood enemies, and she's trying to look like she's moved on from like her boyfriend, like sleeping with someone, and just wants the heat off her. So they fake date. He's a doctor that's been like traveling around the world doing like during humanitarian crises, so he's got some trauma. I just really love the way that they communicated. It's also fake dating romance. It doesn't have a third act breakup, which I always love. This was amazing. This was a 5-star prediction that ended up getting 5 stars, and she is a beauty. She is great. I'm obsessed with her. Probably not for everybody, but for me, it is for me. We are at book 15, and from 15 upwards, we kind of get to the pointy end where things could purely pick and choose. Like, I could easily change them around. This was like the hardest sort of rank to do. The bottom 10 were pretty easy, but the top 15 was hard. Book 15 is Just My Luck by Lena Hendricks. I originally thought this might be in my top 10, and then I sort of started working. I'm like, no, it's not a top 10 book. Because I felt like it's really hard, because there is an overall message, but I feel like the messages in the earlier books are kind of greater. I don't really know how to sort of explain my reasoning, but this is book 15. This is a marriage of convenience, workplace romance, single mum. Now, all the tropes that I love and adore. This one is, so she wants access to her trust, but she needs to be married to do so. She wants to keep custody of her kids, and he wants to buy his dad out of his pub. So she proposes. He's also her boss at like her job that she has at the local bar, and she constantly like eggs him on and to like give in. And I never expected Abel to be my favorite, but Abel is my favorite king brother with ease. Yeah, so she proposes like them to get married so that they sort of have a more stable relationship, and like she doesn't run the risk of losing her kids to her crazy ex-husband. My wife lines in this were unmatched. This was beautiful. There was a bit of a third act breakup, which I didn't love. Got resolved pretty quickly, and I loved their romance. It was so sensual and beautiful in such a great way, and the plot I loved. Truly like a top fave. I don't know if book 4 can top this. Book 3 definitely didn't. 14 is Swift and Saddle by Lila Sage. Now, I was like, is this my favorite Lila Sage? Is Lost and Lassoed, but this one is the second fave. Then it's Lost and Lassoed of this year's reads. Could I rank the 3 of them? Absolutely not. I could not pick a fave. It would be way too hard, but because they've all gotten 5 stars. This is a 5-star series in my mind, and no one can convince me otherwise. The way that she packs a punch in a short little is truly unmatched. She manages to tackle some heavier topics, great relationship development in such a good size. That's my thing. So this is a workplace romance. We are following Weston and Ada. Now Weston, he's taken over little Blue. That's going to be his like B&B, and he's employed Ada to help him with this renovation project. Now, this starts off in the Devil's Boot, and they have like a tryst in the middle of the club, and then the next day she rocks up to renovate. And Amos is just shifty and makes her move into the main house with Weston, and see where that's gonna go. Black cat golden retriever energy. He has ADHD, depression, I believe, and it's just the mental health representation, the journey that these two go on, their backstories are beautiful. I love this so much. Easy 5-star read. I smashed it in a day. No critiques. Books 13 to 11 could easily be changed around in any order. These truly were so hard to sort of differentiate, but these are so good. These are so good. Some of these are underrated gems, but there's some faves. So book 13 is Only for the Weak by Natasha Bishop. I believe this is a debut novel, but Natasha Bishop, whatever you write out, whatever you publish is going to be a fave for me. This is like an enemies to lovers romance. She is the maid of honor at her sister's wedding and he is the best man, and they decide they're gonna sleep together for the week while they're in like Mexico for this wedding, and so they do. They are loaded. He is loaded. I should say. He's a game developer, and he like charters a yacht, packs her a book and Kindle so she has options so that she can read in quiet, and it was just great. It was sexy, but it was also like a real journey of sisterhood. Her sister is also marrying her ex-boyfriend, which adds a whole nother level of complexity, and the chaos that ensues, the drama was insane. The ending blew me away. I was so shocked about how she managed to do it, but I loved it. Truly a 5-star read. And the next one is Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. For a while I was like, is this my fave? The other book my fave? But I decided on the other book is my fave. This one is my book 12. Again, these could be changed at any point. There's no real true rank, but this is the rank that I came up with. This is a marriage reconciliation, so second chance marriage reconciliation. So Yasmin and Josiah suffer a terrible situation, ordeal, and they decide to divorce after the fact. And they have 2 teenage children, so it's them like navigating co-parenting and moving on from each other and trying to find themselves again. But it ends up being their journey back to each other. And it is done in such a beautiful way. It is emotional. The way that Kennedy Ryan writes emotional human experiences is like nothing other. She is truly one of the best writers I've ever read about, and I just think she is amazing. Again, sexy, sensual, beautiful, but it is also like a story of sisterhood. Like it follows like 3 best friends, and I loved this. This is such a good take on like a romance. It definitely toes that line of romance with a bit of like women's fiction, because there is like a journey. There is also romance. Like this is what I want from a romance book. I want that towing the line of women's fiction and romance in the best way. Then we have book 11, which is 7 Days in June. This book has stuck with me forever. I love this. This is by T. Williams. This is a second chance romance. This is a journey of a single mum back to a boy that she spent 7 days in June with and has never been able to forget. They both become authors and essentially write books for each other. Like their main characters are based on them. Her MMCs are always based on him and his FMCs are always based on her. And then eventually years later they find their way back to each other. She's a mum and dealing with like chronic illness and dealing with PTSD from her childhood, and it is, again, written in such a sensual way and tackles these really heavy topics in a way that makes it easy enough to read. The severity of the situation is definitely not being lost. So make sure you check your triggers, because there is a lot of heavy topics, but this book is amazing, and anything this woman writes, I will read. I hope she releases a book next year. I don't know if she is, but I loved it. I can't begin to explain my words. Again, this is probably one that I'll like reread every year because it is amazing. But yeah, that is books 24 to 11, my honourable mentions, my top 24, I guess. Tomorrow you're going to see the top 10, and that list was hard to make, but there are some goodies. That is all for today. I'll see you tomorrow for BOOKMAS Day 10. Bye guys!